episode of iThrive's Geeky Podcast. I'm Chandra Biswas, researcher at iThrive. In the previous episode, we learned about xenoestrogens and how it impacted our lives. In today's podcast, we'll be learning about chrononutrition. So we have with us Mr. Krishna Mesta, nutrition researcher at iThrive. Hello, Krishna.
Hello, Chandra.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good as well.
Yeah.
So, coming to our topic, I learned about chronobiology when I was in our master's and our bachelor days. So, chrononutrition is actually a new field for me. So, do you want to share some insights about it?
Yes. Chrononutrition is basically an interaction between the health systems along with nutrition. It actually helps to understand the interaction between the food which we consume, the metabolism, and how it has an impact on the metabolic syndrome or the obesity which we see generally these days. Like the chrononutrition can be related to circadian rhythm because our body has an internal clock, that is the master regulator clock in the suprachiasmatic nuclei, which is located in our brain. So it controls how we eat, how the enzymes are synthesized in our body at which time. So the food consumption and along with the how it is metabolized is generally like regulated with the help of this metabolic clock, and it is an emerging field, so more research needs to be carried out in this field as well.
Yeah. So, talking about molecular clocks, what are the factors that actually affects this molecular clock?
Yeah, the factors which affect the circadian rhythm or the molecular clock which you just talked about are like temperature. Like it is generally observed that at night our body temperature slightly falls down so that it's easier or it helps to fall asleep a little bit easier for us. While once we get up in the morning, our temperature is actually quite a little bit high so that it makes us little bit, I would say, uncomfortable so that we can actually get up and go and do our task. Along with that, our exposure to light, the sunlight, because our eyes contain retina which actually detects the colors which we see. It also has photosensitive cells inside it which will actually go and regulate or maybe charge a master regulator in the suprachiasmatic nuclei, which are generally like they are aligned, like if you go and see the anatomy of it. So that's one reason, like a factor which affects the circadian rhythm. Along with that, I would say the food which we consume, like research has actually shown, which is done on mice as well as on other small primates or even vertebrates as well. Like the food which we consume actually helps to regulate our clock in the system as well.
So, I heard that on birds also it was done.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, are there any environmental factors that affect circadian rhythm?
Yes, I'm actually glad you asked me the question because I was actually about to touch a little bit more about here as well. So, studies have been conducted on fish, even like you mentioned about birds as well, and even on mice as well. Like as of now, they have identified more than 30 environmental toxins, which could be steroid hormones, which could be your biocides, pesticides, polyphenols, or maybe even the plastics. They actually go and disrupt this circadian rhythm, the master clock, which is present in our brain. Also, there's one point which I would like to mention here. Like each cell in our body, it has its own 24 hours life, like this clock. So it regulates, like as I mentioned, like it regulates at what time this enzymes needs to be released or the metabolism. So this is actually getting affected by these environmental toxins. So as of now, to actually elucidate the mechanism of this, like the studies have been not conducted thoroughly or maybe that vigorously to actually put forth this mechanism. However, this, as I mentioned earlier, this field is quite like emerging and it's blooming. So maybe in a future podcast, maybe we can discuss about the roles of environmental toxin, how it affects us like mammals and humans as well.
Yeah. So, one of the most important questions which I wanted to ask you is how you correlate circadian rhythm with the meal timings.
Yes. So before we touch there, I would like to introduce you guys to what are chronotypes. Like there are actually three chronotypes in individual, that is morning chronotype, evening chronotype, and neutral chronotype. Now in morning chronotype individual, what happens is that these people are early risers, and they are active mostly in the morning, and by the time it's evening time they'll start feeling sleepy and they'll fall asleep earlier. While in evening individual, they are mostly active in the evening time. Along with that, the enzymes will be active in evening time. While like 70% of this individual mostly fall into the neutral category, like they are either not morning individuals, no, chronotype, nor they are evening chronotype. Now what happens is that if there is dysregulation of food consumption, like as we are seeing or observing this in a modern lifestyle in the 21st century, like whenever we consume food whenever at whatever time that we want, but if it doesn't align with the chronotypes which we have, like if a morning individual person whose enzyme activity will be quite higher in the morning, right, and that individual instead of consuming food in the morning like the heavy meal start consuming that in the evening, so again there is some dysregulation into the enzyme metabolism, or the food which is consumed, like it won't be broken down that easily, and again it's going to cause some metabolic issues. So that is what we are actually observing, like in the current times in this, like there is too much of metabolic syndromes due to toxins, as well as there is the metabolism is hampered a lot. So we need to understand which chronotype we actually belong to, like, and that is actually going to help us a lot to lose weight as well as to optimize our health as well.
Yeah. So in today, like the youngsters, what we do is that we, by the time the sun rises, we sleep.
Yeah.
And accordingly, we also schedule our meal timings. And I read somewhere about chrononutrition. So what is it all about?
Yes, it's the chrono diet which you're talking about is basically consuming higher energy meals in the morning, while little bit like medium calorie dense meal in the lunch, while consuming like little bit like just one meal pattern at dinner. So that's the kind of theory behind the chrono diet. However, what if an individual is evening kind of a person, evening chronotype person, and if that person consumes high calorie meal in the morning, again the disruption which I talked about, like in the morning chronotype individual, we are going to observe the same kind of issue in these individuals as well. So what I would suggest you guys is that before trying out this chrono diet, maybe try to identify which chronotype you fall into. So there's a genetic test called clock gene analysis. So if you, it actually helps us to identify which chronotype we are, either you're morning chronotype person or evening chronotype person, and based on that planning out our meals depending on like the consumption of high calorie food in the morning or evening will actually help us to maintain our metabolic health as well. Along with that, what I would also suggest you guys is that as soon as you get up, try to look towards sun, or directly, not directly, maybe indirectly, so that it actually helps to set in your circadian rhythm, so that again it will help you to like proper synthesis of your enzymes as well, as Dr. Andrew Huberman says in his podcast as well. Like once you get up, just don't look into your mobiles and all, even before you're going to sleep. Just avoid it for like 1 hour or maybe 45 minutes, starting with the 45 minutes. So it actually helps to regulate your circadian rhythm, and it's actually going to be helpful for you.
I learned a lot throughout the entire podcast. Thank you, Krishna, for sharing all the insights about chrononutrition. I learned how chrononutrition is actually important and how there is a relation between circadian rhythm and the meal timings. What new did you learn about chrononutrition while doing your research?
Yeah, so basically while I was doing the research, I actually didn't have idea ki, like this environmental toxin could be playing a role in the circadian rhythm or the chrononutrition or even the regulation of the circadian rhythm as well. So basically, this we all talk about steroid hormones, this environmental toxin in other context as well. However, it will be having a role in circadian or the chrononutrition that I actually found very fascinating, and maybe waiting for future researchers or maybe us also to kind of take in these studies and actually put forth a mechanism which can actually help us to identify these roles of environmental toxins. Kind of beneficial for us and everyone, I would say.
That was really nice, Krishna. And I hope the audience might have learned a lot from this podcast. And if you have done some research about it, do comment on the comment section. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you in the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.